Violence thrives on miscalculation, on the assumption that the weak will remain weak, that fear will keep its victims frozen. Trey Grayson and his crew had built their reputation on that very belief. When they spotted Ava Carter, pregnant and alone, leaving a corner store on a quiet afternoon, they saw nothing but an opportunity, an easy mark, vulnerable, powerless, a woman who wouldn't fight back. What they didn't see was the war they were about to start. Because Ava Carter wasn't alone, not really. The man they didn't notice, the one who was coming for them, was her husband, Malik Carter, a former Army Ranger trained to eliminate threats before they knew they existed. And while Malik had left combat behind, his instincts had never dulled. By the time Trey and his men realized who they were dealing with, the city they ruled would no longer belong to them. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe. Ava Carter stepped out of the clinic, blinking against the late afternoon sun as it dipped toward the horizon, casting long, golden streaks across the bustling city streets. The warmth of the day lingered, but a crispness in the air hinted at the approaching evening. The faint scent of exhaust mixed with the aroma of street food from a nearby vendor, the rhythmic hum of traffic blending with the distant chatter of pedestrians. 30 weeks, that's what the doctor had confirmed. Her baby was strong, heartbeat steady, growing just as expected, moving more each day. The thought made her chest tighten with a mixture of relief and anticipation. Soon, she and Malik would be parents. She traced gentle fingers over the curve of her stomach, feeling the flutter of life within her. Adjusting the strap of her purse over her shoulder, she exhaled, already imagining Malik's reaction. He would be thrilled, maybe even a little smug. She could already hear his deep, teasing voice in her head, calling her his warrior queen, and insisting that she take it easy. His protectiveness had only intensified since the pregnancy, and she smiled to herself, shaking her head, always watching, always worrying. Malik had seen too much during his years in the service. Too much violence, too much loss. It had hardened him, sharpened his instincts. He didn't trust the world, not even their own neighborhood, and he wasn't wrong. Ava's gaze flickered around as she walked. The sun's low angle stretched shadows across the pavement, distorting shapes, making everything feel just a little more uncertain. A group of teenagers huddled on a stoop, their laughter loud, unfiltered, one of them taking a drag off a cigarette before passing it along. Nearby, two men in dark hoodies leaned against the wall outside a liquor store, speaking in hushed, deliberate tones. Their eyes followed her as she passed, though she refused to meet their gaze. A car with tinted windows idled at the curb, the deep hum of its engine nearly lost beneath the city's noise. It hesitated, then rolled forward at a slow, deliberate pace. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. This wasn't the best part of town, but it was home. It had been home her whole life. She had grown up here, gone to school just a few blocks away, and now she taught at the local elementary. She knew these streets, knew their rhythm, their dangers, and their comforts. Malik always said the city had changed, that it wasn't the place she remembered, that it wasn't safe anymore. He wasn't paranoid, just experienced. But Ava refused to live in fear. She had taken this walk 100 times before, and she would take it 100 more. Her sneakers padded softly against the cracked pavement as she approached the small corner store at the end of the block, the worn-out "Open" sign flickering slightly in the window. The familiar scent of spices, old wood, and something faintly sweet greeted her as she stepped inside. The tiny shop had been there for decades, wedged between a laundromat and a barber shop, both closed for the day. The familiar ding of the bell above the door chimed, announcing her entrance. The narrow aisles were stocked to the ceiling with goods, shelves lined with everything from canned soup to dusty bottles of imported soda. From behind the counter, Mr. Patel, the shop's owner, glanced up, adjusting his reading glasses as he put down a small radio he had been fiddling with. His warm, wrinkled face creased into a polite smile. "Afternoon, Mrs. Carter. You're out a little late." His voice, thick with a lingering accent, carried the same mix of concern and curiosity It always did when he saw her alone in the evening. "Doctor's appointment ran long," she replied, reaching for a bottle of water from the refrigerated case. The cold air tickled her skin as she grabbed a small pack of crackers from a nearby rack. "Just heading home now." Mr. Patel nodded, but didn't say anything else. He hesitated, just for a moment, his expression carefully neutral. Ava noticed the subtle flick of his gaze toward the window. Brief, but deliberate. It was nothing. Nothing to worry about. Still, as she handed him a few crumpled bills, she felt a tiny prickle of unease creep up her spine. She tucked her small bag under her arm as she stepped out of the store, the bell above the door chiming again in her wake. Outside, the late afternoon sun had dipped lower, washing the streets in gold and amber, casting long, wavering shadows that stretched across the pavement like reaching fingers. The city seemed to pause, caught between two worlds, the lingering warmth of daylight and the quiet anticipation of nightfall. The streets weren't exactly empty, but something had shifted in the air, a subtle quiet, a change in rhythm, a stillness she hadn't noticed before. She didn't look up right away. Instead, she kept her pace steady, the rhythmic tap of her sneakers against the pavement matching the beat of her own heart. Just a few more blocks home. Then she felt it, a presence, that creeping instinctual awareness that someone was watching her. Across the street, a group of men loitered near the boarded-up laundromat, their figures swallowed by the lengthening shadows. 4, maybe 5. They weren't talking much, just standing there, waiting. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head and a thick jacket despite the lingering warmth in the air, leaned lazily against the wall, flicking open a lighter. The small flame briefly illuminated his sharp features before vanishing, plunging his face back into obscurity. The others stood in the dimming light, their postures casual but calculated, their attention unmistakably fixed on her. Ava's stomach tensed. She kept walking, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse, ignoring the tight coil of unease twisting in her chest. She had dealt with this before. Catcalls, lingering stares, the weight of unwanted eyes following her every move. She had learned how to brush it off, how to keep her head high, and her steps purposeful. This was no different. Right? The moment she passed the mouth of an alley, a figure emerged. Trey Ghost Grayson. She didn't know his name, but she didn't need to. There was something about him, the way he moved, deliberate, confident, like the city belonged to him, like he owned everything in it, including the space she occupied. The late afternoon sun stretched long, distorted shadows across the sidewalk, the fading light catching on the sharp angles of his face. His skin was smooth, his features sharp, his build lean but solid beneath the dark hoodie he wore. His hands were tucked into his pockets, but it wasn't a casual stance. It was controlled, calculated. His expression was smooth, practiced, but it was the smile, the slow, easy curve of his lips that set off every alarm in her body. A predator's grin. Sharp, amused, certain. "Now, hold up, sweetheart," Trey Ghost Grayson said, lifting a hand like he was stopping traffic, his fingers adorned with silver rings that caught the last remnants of daylight. His voice was smooth, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world, like he already knew how this was going to play out. "Where are you rushing off to?" Ava didn't stop walking, didn't acknowledge him. "Keep moving, don't engage." But as she stepped forward, the shadows shifted, and 2 more figures peeled away from the alley's darkness, moving in from either side. Her pulse spiked, trapped. Trey took a lazy step closer, hands still in his pockets, his stance easy but imposing. "Come on now," he continued, his tone dipping into something almost playful. "Almost. You can't say hi?" Ava finally met his gaze, forcing herself to keep her expression neutral. "Don't show fear. Don't give him anything. I'm just trying to get home," she said evenly. Trey clicked his tongue, shaking his head like she had disappointed him. "That's so, 'cause you look like you got all the time in the world." Behind him, the other men chuckled, the sound low and knowing. One of them, a broad-shouldered guy with a scar running along his jawline, cracked his knuckles, while the other, a wiry man with a gold tooth, watched her with a smirk. Ava clenched her jaw. Calm. Stay calm. She took a slow breath. If she panicked, she lost. "I don't want any trouble," she said carefully, shifting her bag against her hip. Trey's gaze flicked downward, to her stomach. A flicker of recognition. Then amusement. "Damn!" Trey whistled low, shaking his head like he had just stumbled onto something real interesting. The smirk tugging at his lips deepened, the corners of his mouth curling like he was savoring some private joke. "You carrying, huh?" He took a step closer, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. Close enough that Ava caught the scent of cigarettes and cologne, cheap, sharp, clinging to his hoodie like a second skin. The air between them grew tight, charged with an unspoken challenge. "How far along?" Ava stiffened. "Don't answer. Don't engage." "Doesn't matter," she said, her voice steady, even as her fingers curled tighter around the strap of her bag. Trey chuckled, the sound rich with amusement. "Oh, but it do." His eyes gleamed as he tilted his head, sizing her up like she was a puzzle he was piecing together. "See? You out here all alone, this late in the day, walking like you got no worries in the world." His smile widened. All teeth, all threat. That's either brave or stupid. The men around him shifted, the movement subtle but suffocating. A noose tightening. Ava's throat went dry. This wasn't a robbery. This was something else. Her pulse pounded as her gaze flicked toward the street, toward the golden haze of the setting sun, toward the distant rumble of a passing car. The daylight was fading fast, stretching shadows long across the pavement. People were still out. A man stood outside a corner store, digging into a paper bag. A woman pushed a stroller a block away. A group of kids rode bikes, laughter echoing faintly. But no one was coming. Trey leaned in, his voice dropping lower, smoothing into something almost intimate. "Almost. Bet your man don't know you out here like this." Ava swallowed hard, her pulse hammering against her ribs, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Hold steady. Don't blink. Don't let them see it. You don't want to do this." Trey's grin widened, flashing teeth, full of something dark and easy, mocking, amused. "Oh, I think we do." Behind her, one of his men, the one with the scar along his jawline, broad and looming like a wall, chuckled under his breath. A low, knowing sound, laced with anticipation. They were enjoying this. The power, the fear. Ava's mind raced. Think, think, think. Her pulse pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears, drowning out the distant sounds of the street. Her fingers twitched toward her phone, muscles coiled. But Trey caught the movement, too sharp, too quick, like a predator catching the flick of a rabbit's tail. "Oh no, sweetheart," he tsked, his voice dipping into something almost amused. Almost. He reached forward. Fast. Too fast. His fingers barely grazed her wrist. Ava jerked away, her breath catching as she ripped her arm back. For a split second. Silence. Trey's face darkened, his jaw tightening, amusement flickering into something colder. Irritation, control slipping, and that's when everything changed. The air shifted, subtle, but undeniable. Not just a presence, not just eyes. Someone was here. Ava knew it before she even turned. A voice, low and lethal, cut through the late afternoon stillness like a gunshot. "Take your hands off my wife." Trey froze. His men stiffened, their postures snapping from loose to alert. Hunted. Ava exhaled, her entire body unclenching for the first time. "Malik." He stood a few feet away, feet shoulder-width apart, hands relaxed at his sides, but his presence was anything but casual. Coiled, controlled, unreadable. Malik Carter was not a big man. Not in the way Trey's guys were, broad-shouldered, heavy with muscle, but he didn't need to be. His strength was in the way he carried himself. The quiet confidence, the absence of fear. His dark eyes flicked across the scene, quick, calculating, cataloging threats in seconds. 4 men. Trey in front. 2 flanking Ava. 1 lurking near the alley's mouth. Strategic positioning. A trap. Damn. Trey's grin didn't waver. If anything, it stretched wider, his teeth flashing like a wolf who had just found a new game to play. This him? The baby daddy? A chuckle rippled through the crew. Low, amused. A shared joke at Malik's expense. Malik didn't even blink. He ignored them completely. His focus locked on Ava. You okay? I'm fine, she said, voice steady. But she knew him. She knew what he heard beneath it. The tightness. The edge of fear she couldn't quite hide. Malik exhaled through his nose. Slow. Measured. Calm. Calculating. His shoulders didn't tense. His stance didn't shift. But something in him changed. A decision made. He didn't look at Trey yet. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step forward, positioning himself between Ava and them, a shield. A warning. You have 5 seconds to walk away. His voice was low, even, but final. A tone that didn't beg or bluff. That made Trey laugh. Ain't that something? He mused, glancing at his boys. His amusement was real, but beneath it, something else. A flicker of curiosity. Testing. Weighing. We got us a tough guy. Reese, the tallest of the crew, took a step closer. Man thinks he can tell us what to do, he muttered, rolling his shoulders, the leather of his jacket creaking with the movement. His hands were big, scarred, knuckles cracked from too many street fights. A bruiser, a brawler, the kind who didn't need much reason to swing. Ava caught it, the shift in Malik's shoulders. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. He was ready. Trey tilted his head, his grin never slipping. Lazy, taunting. You really think you scaring us, big man? Malik didn't so much as flinch. His expression remained calm, unreadable, controlled. No, his voice was almost bored, flat. I think I'm warning you. That made Trey whistle low, amused. He shook his head, laughing under his breath. See? Now you just making this fun for me. He moved first. Fast. His hand shot out toward Malik's chest. Quick! Testing! Meant to provoke. Malik didn't move. Didn't flinch? Didn't blink? Trey smirked. Oh, you one of them. Stand still and look hard types. Then, without warning, he threw the first punch. It came fast, a sharp, practiced swing, aimed clean at Malik's jaw. But Malik was faster. He tilted his head just enough, the punch whiffing past by an inch. And in the same breath, he struck. Quick, precise, brutal. His right hand snapped out. A sharp, bone-crunching strike to Trey's throat. Trey staggered back, choking, coughing, eyes wide with shock. The second man lunged from the side, a flicker of movement in Ava's periphery. Fast, reckless, desperate. Malik turned smoothly, like he had already seen it coming. His hand shot up, snatching the man's wrist mid-air, twisting sharply. A sickening pop. The sound echoed off the alley walls. The man howled, his knees buckling as he crumpled to the ground, clutching his ruined arm, his face twisted in agony. The next two rushed at once. Big mistake. Malik sidestepped the first, letting the man's own momentum carry him forward. Off balance. Wide open. In a single motion, Malik brought down a precise, devastating elbow strike to the back of his skull. Lights out. The second swung wildly. A right hook, sloppy, full of panic. Malik barely had to react. He ducked, moving like water, fluid and controlled, then drove his knee hard into the man's ribs. Once, twice. A harsh, choked gasp tore from the guy's mouth as he collapsed, hands clutching his side. Ava barely had time to process it. 4 men down in seconds. Trey stumbled back, rubbing his throat, eyes flickering with something that looked eerily close to fear. But then, he did something unexpected. He grinned. A slow, stretching, predatory grin. All right, Trey rasped, his voice rough from the hit, his breath still uneven. Now, I'm interested. Malik didn't respond. He just stood there, watching, waiting, letting the silence press in. Trey rolled his shoulders, cracked his knuckles, the amusement in his eyes shifting into something darker. He didn't run, didn't call off his boys. He wanted to fight. And this time, he wasn't alone. The alley mouth darkened. More figures emerged. Back up. This wasn't over. Ava felt her stomach twist. They weren't just going to let this go. Trey licked his lips, eyes gleaming, the glint of streetlights catching on his teeth as he grinned. "Round two?" he taunted, his voice a low, mocking drawl. Malik exhaled. Slow. Measured. His stance didn't change. Still controlled. Still ready. But Ava saw it. The subtle shift in his gaze. He was preparing for the worst, and Trey knew it. The air in the alley pulsed with tension, thick and suffocating. A moment stretched tight as a wire. Trey stood loose, his posture relaxed, rolling his shoulders like a man stepping into a ring. But his eyes were hungry. He didn't flinch when Malik put 3 of his men on the ground. He was enjoying this. "See?" Trey murmured, cracking his knuckles, the joints popping in the quiet. Slow, deliberate. "Now I gotta make an example out of you." His voice was different now, not teasing, not amused. Colder. "Can't have people thinking they can just embarrass me like this." Malik didn't react, didn't rise to the bait. He wasn't here to prove a point. He just wanted Ava out of there. But the second he shifted, the moment he even looked toward her, the next wave came, 3 at once. The first came in swinging, a wide, sloppy right hook, fueled more by anger than skill. Malik caught it mid-air, fingers locking around the man's wrist like a vice. Before the guy could register the mistake, Malik twisted. Hard. A choked cry. Pain flashing in the man's face. Then, with brutal efficiency, Malik yanked him forward and drove his forehead straight into his nose. A sickening crack. Blood sprayed, dark against the dim alley light. The guy let out a garbled curse before his knees buckled, his body hitting the pavement like a dropped weight. The second man lunged before Malik could reset, low and fast, a full-body tackle, impact. The momentum slammed them both into the rough brick wall, the force rattling Malik's ribs. Ava gasped, her heart lurching. Malik gritted his teeth, the burn radiating through his side, but there was no time to recover, because the third man was already coming. Stocky, heavy-set, a brawler. A brutal punch to the stomach. Thud. Ava flinched as the sound echoed through the alley. Malik absorbed the blow, exhaling sharply to keep his core tight. It hurt, but he'd taken worse. The moment the man reared back for another, Malik struck first. A sharp elbow to the jaw, bone on bone. The man's head snapped sideways, his balance faltering, his knees buckling. Malik pivoted, grabbed the second guy, fingers twisting in his collar, muscles flexing, and threw him. Hard. The bodies collided mid-fall, crashing onto the pavement in a tangled heap of limbs and curses. A breath. 2 left standing. Trey and Reese. The last 2 standing. Reese looked at Trey, his stance no longer as firm, his weight shifting between his feet. "Yo, what we doing, man?" His voice lacked the bravado it held minutes ago. Doubt. Hesitation. Trey smirked, but it wasn't as easy as before. Blood stained the corner of his mouth, and his breathing was uneven. "Ain't nothing changed." Malik exhaled, slow, steady, rolling his shoulders, loosening the tension. He was done waiting. Reese hesitated. Trey didn't. He moved fast, too fast for someone built like him. His first punch clipped Malik's jaw, a sharp sting. But before Malik could reset, the second came. Low, precise, aimed for his ribs. A calculated strike. Malik blocked, absorbing the impact against his forearm before countering. A brutal, open palm strike straight to Trey's sternum. A solid hit. Trey staggered back, coughing, one hand instinctively going to his chest. His smirk was gone. For the first time his eyes flickered, not with arrogance, but with something dangerously close to doubt. Malik didn't hesitate. He closed the gap in a single step, grabbed Trey by his hoodie, and slammed him against the brick wall. The impact echoed through the alley. Ava flinched at the sound. Trey groaned, his head lolling forward. But then he laughed. low, rough, amused. Damn, he muttered, coughing past the pain. All right, all right. Malik tightened his grip. You done? Trey lifted his head. And there it was again, that slow, dangerous grin stretching across his bloodied face. Nah. And just like that, Reese moved. He snatched a glass bottle from the ground, gripped tight, knuckles white, and swung straight for Malik's head. Ava gasped. But Malik was faster. Malik ducked, fast and fluid, just as the bottle whistled past his head and shattered against the brick wall behind him. Glass sprayed, scattering across the pavement in jagged shards. Before Reese could recover, Malik pivoted, quick, precise, and drove his knee straight into his gut. A sharp, brutal hit. Reese's breath hitched, a wheezing, choking sound. His body folded in on itself, legs buckling beneath him as he crumpled to the pavement, arms wrapped around his stomach. Ava clutched her bag tighter, fingers pressing into the leather. Her breath uneven, her pulse a drum in her ears. It was over, or at least, it should have been. Trey still sat slumped against the wall, one hand lazily wiping the blood from his split lip, rolling his jaw, testing it. His expression was unreadable. Then he grinned. Slow, easy, dangerous. You really think this is over? His voice was hoarse but steady, still laced with that undeniable confidence. I got people everywhere, big man. You and your girl? He whistled low, shaking his head, mocking, almost amused. Y'all just put a target on your backs. Malik said nothing, didn't blink, didn't flinch. Ava reached for him, her hand brushing his arm, her voice barely above a whisper. Malik, let's go. He didn't move at first. His muscles were still coiled, his breathing steady but deep. His instinct screamed to finish this, to end Trey right here, to make sure he never got back up. But he couldn't. Not now. Not like this. His jaw tightened. His fingers twitched. Every part of him wanted to act, to put an end to the threat. Instead, Malik took a slow breath, forcing the tension down. With one last glare, dark and full of warning, he released Trey, his fingers loosening, his body stepping back with deliberate control. Then, without another word, he reached for Ava, his grip firm but careful, and led her out of the alley. They didn't look back. Behind them, Trey coughed, shifting against the wall. Then, his voice, sharp, loud, echoing. This ain't over. You hear me? We comin' for you. Malik's grip on Ava's hand tightened. He knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The door to their apartment slammed shut behind them, the sound reverberating through the quiet space, echoing in the stillness like a final exclamation mark to the night's chaos. Ava stood just inside, her chest rising and falling too fast, her breath shallow and uneven. She clutched her purse to her chest, fingers curled so tightly around the strap that her knuckles turned white. She was safe. They were safe, but she didn't feel safe. Her skin prickled, her body still caught in the aftershock of adrenaline, every nerve in her system screaming that the danger wasn't over. Malik locked the door, the heavy click grounding the room in silence. Then he bolted it. Once, twice, checked the peephole, moved to the side window. His mind was running in sharp, tactical motions, his breath steady but measured. He was still on high alert. Ava exhaled, but it came out shaky. Too shaky. She lifted a trembling hand, running it gently over the swell of her belly, her palm pressing against the fabric of her shirt as if to reassure herself. I thought, her voice wavered, cracking under the weight of everything unspoken. She stopped, pressing a hand to her chest. Malik turned, finally facing her. His voice was level. Too level. Controlled. You're all right. It wasn't a question. It was a command, a certainty. She nodded, even though she didn't feel all right. She studied him, her eyes tracing every line of tension in his body, the stiffness in his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw, the way his fingers flexed and curled at his sides as if he were still waiting for the next fight. He wasn't just standing there, he was calculating, processing, preparing. Ava's chest clenched. "They're not going to stop, are they?" she asked. Malik didn't answer right away, because they both already knew the truth. His breath left him in a slow, controlled exhale. Not fear, not hesitation, acceptance. Then he stepped forward. His hands, rough, steady, warm, came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing lightly over her cheeks. "I won't let them touch you." A vow, a promise, a war already won in his mind. Ava leaned into him, seeking warmth, seeking certainty. "That's not what I asked." Her voice was soft, but there was no mistaking the weight behind it. Malik didn't reply, because he wasn't the kind of man to make promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he pressed his forehead against hers, the contact brief but grounding. A silent reassurance, a quiet vow. Then he pulled back, and just like that, his entire demeanor shifted, back to war mode. "I need to check the area." Ava stiffened. "Malik, we just got home. I won't go far." He moved toward the bedroom, his movements quick, precise. A soldier readying for battle. He pulled open a drawer. "Just the block," he murmured, fingers brushing over the cold steel inside. "I need to know if they followed us." Ava's stomach twisted, a slow, sinking weight. "You think they did?" Malik didn't answer, which meant yes. Ava clenched her jaw, frustration clawing up her throat. "So what?" she snapped. "You're just gonna go out there alone?" Malik didn't hesitate. He stepped to the closet, pulled out the small, heavy safe, and entered the code with steady fingers. The latch clicked open, cold metal, dark steel. He pulled out his Glock, checked the magazine with a swift, practiced motion, then slid it into his waistband. No hesitation. No second-guessing. He wasn't taking chances. Ava's throat went dry. She had never seen him like this, not even when they argued about the baby's name, or when he got protective about her taking the train alone. This was different. This wasn't overprotectiveness. This was war. Malik finally met her gaze, his voice softer now, gentler. "I'll be right back." Ava hated this. She hated every part of this. But she also knew Malik wasn't a man who could sit still when a threat was looming, so she just nodded. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her shirt, pressing against her stomach as if shielding the baby from something unseen. "Be careful." Outside, the city was quiet. Too quiet. Malik's boots barely made a sound as he moved along the sidewalk. His eyes scanned everything, every shadow, every parked car, every window where a curtain shifted just a little too late. He knew how this worked. Trey wasn't going to charge in, guns blazing, reckless, and loud. No, he was going to watch first. He was going to make Malik sweat, make him wonder when the next move was coming. Where? How? Malik walked the block twice, his pace steady, his senses sharp, tuned to every flicker of movement, every shift in the air. But no one was tailing him. That didn't mean no one was watching. As he turned back toward the apartment, a throat cleared nearby, low, deliberate. Malik slowed. "Mr. Davis." The old man sat slouched on the stoop of his brownstone, a cigarette dangling from his fingers, smoke curling in the dim glow of the streetlight. His face was weathered, lined with age and things he didn't talk about. A retired Marine, a man who had seen war and lived to tell the tale. He had been on this block for decades. He didn't look up, didn't turn his head, just dragged on his cigarette, exhaled and muttered, "Word travels fast, son." Malik stopped a few feet away. He didn't need to ask what that meant. "Yeah?" Malik said instead, his voice calm, too calm. Davis nodded, still staring at the street like he was watching something unfold that hadn't happened yet. "Them boys? They comin'." Malik's jaw tightened. He already knew that. Davis took another slow drag, then flicked his cigarette to the curb, embers dying against the pavement. "You should lay low, Carter." Now he glanced at him, really looked at him. His gaze drifted over Malik's bruised knuckles, the slight tension in his stance, the quiet fire burning in his eyes. A man ready for war. Davis exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head. You done pissed off the wrong kind of man. Malik's hands curled into fists. He put his hands on my wife. Davis nodded, slow, like he understood, like he'd been there once. Then he sighed. That don't change what's comin'. Malik didn't respond, because he didn't run. He didn't hide, but he wasn't alone anymore. Ava, the baby. They were his priority. Malik exhaled, rolling his shoulders, trying to shake off the tension sinking into his muscles. Appreciate the heads up. Davis just grunted. A sound full of knowing. You know I ain't the only one that saw what happened, right? He tapped the side of his head. These young ones, they got phones, Carter. They got mouths. And that's when it hit him. Trey didn't have to look for them. He already knew. The next morning, Ava woke to the sound of her phone buzzing against the nightstand. The low vibration rattling through the quiet. She squinted at the screen. Jasmine. She almost didn't answer. Too early. Too tired. But something in her gut twisted. An instinct she couldn't ignore. She swiped to pick up. The moment she did, Jasmine's voice hit like a gunshot. Ava girl, tell me Malik did not go and fight Trey Grayson last night. Ava's stomach dropped. She sat up so fast the sheets tangled around her legs. How do you know that? Jasmine scoffed, the sound sharp through the speaker. How do I? Ava, it's all over the neighborhood. Her voice was edged with urgency, frustration. You know Trey ain't the type to take an ass-whooping in silence. Everybody's talking about how some dude put hands on him, and his crew is out for blood. Ava pressed a hand to her temple, fingers pressing hard, trying to fight off the headache creeping in. Her worst fear was unfolding. Malik doesn't know yet, she muttered. Jasmine's reply was instant. Well, you better tell him before someone else does. Ava hung up and threw the covers back, her pulse pounding as she untangled herself from the sheets and swung her legs over the side of the bed. She didn't have to go far. In the living room, Malik was already awake. He sat at the dining table, his back straight, shoulders tense, scrolling through his phone, jaw clenched, eyes hard. He knew. Ava hesitated at the doorway, her heartbeat thrumming against her ribs. You saw? Malik nodded, his thumb still moving slowly across the screen. People are talking. Ava's throat tightened. How bad? She already knew the answer. She just didn't want to hear it. What do we do? She whispered. Before Malik could answer, a knock at the door made them both freeze. Ava's breath caught. Malik moved first, his body shifting into defense mode before his mind could even register the fear crawling up her spine. His hand wrapped around the gun on the table. Quick, steady. He tucked it behind his waistband and moved to the door, shoulders squared, every muscle in his body ready. He checked the peephole. Then he exhaled, just slightly. It's Hale. Ava let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Malik unbolted the door and pulled it open, his grip firm on the handle, body still tense. Detective Marcus Hale stepped inside, his usual worn suit slightly rumpled, his tie loosened just enough to show the long night he'd had. His sharp, knowing eyes swept the room in one practiced glance, taking in everything. Malik's stance, Ava's tension, the barely touched coffee on the counter. Then, his gaze settled on Malik. Busy night? Hale said dryly, arching a brow. Malik didn't blink, didn't flinch. What do you want? Hale sighed, dragging a hand over his face, his features drawn with exhaustion. I should be asking you that. Then he turned to Ava, his voice softening, just slightly. You okay? Ava nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Hale saw right through it. Hale exhaled, shifting his weight, his gaze flicking between them. Look, I don't have all day, so let's cut to it. I know what happened last night, and so does half the damn city. His voice was edged with frustration, but beneath it, there was something else. Concern. Trey ain't the type to take a loss quietly, and he sure as hell ain't the type to let it go. Malik leaned against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes weren't. I can handle it. Hale's expression turned sharp, his brows pulling together. Yeah? You gonna handle it when they come for Ava? Ava tensed. When they come for you, while she's out alone? Hale's voice dipped lower, deliberate, pressing against the tension in the room. You think this is a fair fight, Carter? 'Cause it's not. Malik's jaw clenched. He knew that. But knowing it didn't make it easier to hear. Hale ran a hand down his face, frustration seeping into his movements. Look, man, I get it. You don't want to run. You don't want to back down. But you're not thinking long-term here. His voice softened just slightly, but his words stayed firm. Trey's got money, connections, and a whole crew ready to follow him off a cliff. You can't fight them all. Malik didn't respond. Because what was there to say? Hale exhaled, shaking his head. I got a place for you two. Off-grid. No one knows it but me. You lay low. Give us time to put some pressure on Trey's crew. Otherwise, you're putting a target on her back. Silence. Then, Ava didn't even hesitate. We'll take it. Malik's head snapped toward her. His brows furrowed. Ava, no. Her voice was firm, unshaken. Final. She met his gaze, unflinching. I'm not arguing with you about this. His eyes darkened, but she didn't care. She wasn't just his wife. She was carrying his child, and she refused to put their family in danger because of pride. Ava swallowed, her voice quieter now, but no less strong. Malik, please. A muscle ticked in his jaw, but when Malik finally exhaled, it wasn't in anger, just reluctant acceptance. A slow, measured breath, letting go of control, letting go of the fight. At least for now. He turned back to Hale. When? Hale nodded, his expression unreadable. Tonight, Ava sagged in relief, her shoulders loosening just a fraction, the tension gripping her spine finally easing. Malik, though, he just clenched his fists at his sides. Because he knew, leaving didn't mean they were safe. It just meant the hunt had begun. The safe house was quiet, too quiet. No traffic, no city noise, just the hum of an old fridge in the corner and the faint creak of the floorboards beneath their feet. Ava sat on the worn-out couch, its cushions sinking slightly beneath her weight. Her hands rested protectively over her belly, fingers splayed, tracing idle circles against the fabric of her shirt, trying to ignore the tight coil of anxiety pressing against her ribs. The house was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchenette, barely furnished, but clean, secure, hidden, and yet it still didn't feel like home. Safe, or at least, that's what Hale had promised. Ava wanted to believe it. She glanced toward the single window, the curtains drawn, but the faint hum of the outside world still pressing in, distant, muffled, but never quite gone. It was strange being here, in an unfamiliar place, away from their home, away from everything they knew. The walls felt too bare, the space too still, the kind of silence that didn't soothe. It unsettled. Malik, on the other hand, hadn't sat down once since they arrived, not even for a second. He moved through the house in sharp, calculated sweeps, his body tense, his every motion purposeful, focused, checking the locks, peeking through the blinds, double-checking the exits, again and again, because safe was just a word, and Malik trusted actions, not promises. Ava swallowed, watching him, reading every subtle shift in his posture. His movements were controlled, precise, but restless. She had seen him like this before. Not at home. Not as her husband. This was Soldier Malik, the man trained to anticipate threats before they came. The man who had survived on instinct alone. She hated that he had to be like this now. Not overseas, not on some mission, but here, in what was supposed to be their refuge. Malik, she said softly, her voice barely breaking the silence. He didn't answer. Didn't even look at her, just kept checking the front door lock for the 3rd time, fingers testing the bolt, shoulders tight with unspent energy. Ava stood, her pulse steadying as she closed the space between them. Malik, this time he looked at her. Dark eyes, guarded, sharp, like he was still somewhere else, still fighting something she couldn't see. You need to sit down, she said, keeping her voice steady, measured, careful. His jaw tensed. I'm fine. No, you're not, she said gently. Her gaze searched his, not with doubt, but with understanding. You're wired like you're expecting an attack any second. Malik's gaze flicked toward the window again, his body still taut with tension. That's because I am. Ava's stomach twisted. He wasn't being paranoid. He was being Malik. The man who didn't take chances. The man who had seen what happened when you let your guard down. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand, her fingers curling around his. Warm, strong, tense. Hale wouldn't have put us here if it wasn't safe. Malik exhaled through his nose, his chest rising and falling in a slow, measured breath. Not convinced. Safe doesn't exist. His voice was low, firm, unshaken. Not when Trey's still out there. Ava hated that she couldn't argue with that. Because he was right. Instead, she squeezed his fingers, grounding them both. Then at least rest for a little while. Her voice softened, pleading. For me? Malik's lips pressed into a tight line, his jaw ticking as if he were fighting some internal battle. Then, after a long moment, he gave her the smallest nod. He didn't sit, but he did wrap an arm around her, strong and steady, pulling her against his chest. Ava closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against him, letting the tension in her body ease for the first time in hours. But outside the safe house, the hunt had already begun. Reese sat in the front seat of the black SUV, fingers tapping a restless rhythm against the steering wheel. His knee bounced, his jaw tight. Man, this is getting ridiculous. Dante, slouched in the passenger seat, checked his phone, the dim glow casting sharp shadows across his face. They ghosted. Reese scoffed, shaking his head. They didn't ghost. They just ran. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel, his jaw tight with impatience. He hated waiting. But I know that guy, Reese muttered. His tone was smug, certain. He ain't that smart. He'll surface. Dante grinned, but there was no humor in it, just cold calculation. And when he does, Reese cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp in the tight space of the SUV. We finish it. Their eyes flicked toward the figure standing just outside the car. Trey, hands stuffed into his pockets, still, silent, dangerous. His expression was unreadable. His gaze fixed down the empty street, taking it all in, calculating. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Trey knew Malik was hiding, but he also knew something else. Fear had a way of making people slip up. Trey turned toward Reese, his movements slow, deliberate, like a man who had all the time in the world. Hit up his people, every single one. His job, his neighbors, that old vet down the block. What's his name? Davis? Reese nodded, already pulling out his phone. Trey's smirk widened, his eyes gleaming with something cold. Ruthless. Yeah, start with him. Reese chuckled darkly, shaking his head. He won't talk. Trey's grin didn't fade, didn't even flicker. They all talk, one way or another. Malik jolted awake. A sharp inhale. A rush of awareness. He hadn't even realized he had fallen asleep. Instantly, he sat up, muscles stiff, mind snapping back to full alert. His eyes darted toward the window. Something had woken him up. He turned toward the bedroom. Ava. She was still asleep, curled up under the blankets, one hand resting over her belly, her breathing soft and even. Good. Malik swung his legs over the couch, pushing up slowly, his heartbeat steady, but his mind buzzing. The house was silent, too silent. Something felt off. His eyes swept the space, scanning. The door? Still locked. The windows? Secured. But he knew better than to trust appearances. He moved to the side of the window, pressing his body against the wall as he peeked out. Nothing. No movement. No figures lurking in the dark. And yet, the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave him. His gut was telling him something, and Malik never ignored his gut. He knew how these things worked. First, they waited. Then, they searched. Then, they closed in. He had been on the other side of this before. He had been the hunter. Now, he was the prey, and that meant it was only a matter of time before Trey found them. The next morning, Ava stirred, the first light of dawn filtering through the blinds. She blinked, stretching, expecting to find Malik beside her, but the bed was empty. She pushed up onto her elbows, eyes adjusting, and there he was, already awake, already dressed, already watching the window. Her heart sank. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, trying to push away the exhaustion weighing her down. "Did you even sleep?" Malik didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed on the window, his body too still, too tense. Then, finally, "They're looking for us." Ava's breath caught in her throat. Her pulse quickened. "How do you know?" Malik turned toward her, his eyes dark, unreadable. "Because I would be." Ava's stomach twisted. She didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. This wasn't just some random street beef anymore. This was personal, and personal meant Trey wasn't going to stop, not until one of them was gone. That evening, as the sky darkened outside the safe house, the first sound came, a knock. Malik was on his feet before Ava could react. His body moved on instinct. His gun was already in his hand. Silent, steady, ready. Ava held her breath as he moved toward the door. Slow, cautious, controlled. He peered through the peephole, muscles tight, heartbeat steady. Then his shoulders eased. Just slightly, he unbolted the door and pulled it open. Detective Hale. He stood on the other side, worn, weathered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Tired, but sharp. His expression was grim. He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him with deliberate care. Then he said exactly what Malik had been expecting. "They found you." The air in the safe house shifted. Heavy, tense, suffocating. Ava felt it the moment Hale shut the door. The exhaustion, the unease, the creeping certainty. It wasn't just in Malik anymore. Now, it was everywhere. Hale's voice was low, urgent, edged with something even he couldn't mask. Concern. "Trey's crew is closing in." Malik's fingers twitched at his side, the only crack in his otherwise unreadable expression. "How close?" Hale exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw, the kind of breath a man takes when he knows he's delivering bad news. "Close enough. My guys intercepted a few of his people asking around a couple blocks over. Someone's been watching, Carter. They know you're here. Maybe not the exact house, but they're narrowing in." Ava's stomach clenched. The walls of the safe house suddenly felt smaller, tighter. "How long do we have?" Malik asked, his voice steady. Hale ran a hand down his face. "Tired, frustrated. Could be tonight, could be tomorrow, but it's coming." Malik's jaw tightened. "Then we handle it." Ava's breath caught. Handle it, like it was that simple. She turned to Hale, searching for something. Some kind of reassurance. A way out. A reason to believe this wasn't inevitable. "Can't you stop them?" Hale's eyes softened. Just a little, but his silence was the answer. Ava swallowed hard, her hand pressing protectively over her stomach. "And if we leave?" Hale sighed. "They'll follow." Ava felt it then. The walls closing in. She was tired of running, tired of waking up in a place that wasn't home, tired of waiting, of holding her breath, of feeling like every second was just another countdown to the next nightmare. Malik turned to her, his movements measured, deliberate. "I won't let them near you." His voice was calm, steady, unshakable, but his eyes were sharp, cold, because he wasn't thinking about escape anymore. He was thinking about stopping this before it got worse, before Trey could come knocking, before Ava ever had to feel afraid again. The night stretched on, thick with tension, the weight of it settling into every corner of the small house. Malik sat near the window, his silhouette rigid against the dim glow of the outside streetlights. His gun rested on the table beside him, his fingers tapping lightly against the wood. Slow, methodical, waiting. Hale had left an hour ago, promising to get back up. But Malik didn't count on that. He counted on himself. Ava barely spoke. She sat curled on the couch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her fingers pressing into her sides as if bracing against a chill only she could feel. Her gaze flicked to the window every time the wind stirred the curtains, her breath catching with each shift of the shadows. Then, movement. Malik's back went straight, every muscle locking into place. His fingers wrapped around his gun before his mind even registered why. Instinct, there, across the street. A figure, standing just outside the wash of the streetlight. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. One of Trey's. Ava's breath hitched, her body going rigid as she followed Malik's gaze. "Oh my God!" Malik didn't blink, didn't breathe, waiting, watching, calculating. Then the figure moved, not toward them, but toward the house next door. Malik's stomach turned to stone, because he knew this wasn't just recon anymore. This was positioning. "They're checking houses," Malik murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava's breath stuttered. "What?" Her pulse pounded in her ears. "They don't know which one we're in." Malik's voice was low, measured, but tight, controlled. "They're clearing possibilities." Ava's blood ran cold, door to door, checking every shadow, every window, every entrance. It was only a matter of time. Malik stood. No hesitation, no doubt. Ava barely had time to react before he was already moving toward the back door, his steps silent, deliberate, a soldier slipping into the dark. Her body lurched forward before she could think. "Where are you going?" He didn't stop, didn't even slow. "To stop this before it starts." Her fingers closed around his wrist, tight, desperate. "Malik, no. We should stay inside. They'll find us, either way." His voice was calm, but final, unshakable. "I'm not waiting for them to kick the door down." Ava's heart pounded against her ribs, sharp and insistent. She wanted to fight him on this, wanted to tell him to stay, to be with her, to protect her here. But she knew, if Malik thought waiting was an option, he'd wait, and he wasn't waiting. Her fingers curled tighter around his wrist for a brief second. Then, slowly, she forced herself to let go. Malik didn't hesitate, didn't look back. He moved toward the back exit, slipping into the shadows. And just like that, he was gone. Malik kept to the darkness, his steps light, measured, moving with the kind of quiet that only came from years of training. The scout was still moving, checking porches, peeking through windows, searching. Malik crept closer, measured, precise, calculated. Then he struck. In a blink, Malik closed the distance, silent, swift, deadly. His hands locked onto the scout from behind, yanking him off his feet and dragging him into the alley's shadows. A choked gasp, a struggle, a flailing of limbs. But Malik was stronger, faster, more controlled. He slammed the guy against the wall, the impact sending a dull thud through the alley. His forearm pressed hard against the man's throat, pinning him in place. "Who else is out here?" Malik murmured, his voice low, smooth, dangerous. The man gasped, fingers clawing at Malik's arm, trying to pry himself free. "Man, screw you!" Malik's grip tightened. "Wrong answer." The scout's body stiffened, his eyes widened, darting over Malik's face. Recognition, realization, understanding, fear. "You!" he croaked, voice raw. Trey said, "He's gonna kill you, man." Malik leaned in, voice like ice. "Let him try." The guy's eyes flickered, and in them, Malik saw it. Doubt, hesitation, fear. "Who else is out here?" Malik repeated, his voice colder this time. The man hesitated, a split second too long. Malik pressed harder, his forearm digging into the guy's windpipe, cutting off just enough air to make his vision blur. "You've got 5 seconds before I put you to sleep and find out myself." The man wheezed, his fingers trembling against Malik's arm, his resistance slipping. Fear, panic. The realization that he wasn't walking away from this unless he talked. "2 cars, he rasped. "Few blocks down." Trey said to wait for him before they hit the house. Malik's pulse slowed. Good. That meant there was still time. He didn't give the guy a chance to talk again. Didn't wait for an excuse, a lie, a plea. With one clean, effortless motion, he knocked him out cold. The body slumped against the alley wall, limbs limp, head lolling forward. Malik stood over him, unmoving, expression blank. 1 down. More to go. He turned back toward the house, toward Ava, toward what mattered. Ava sat in the dark, arms wrapped around her stomach, her fingers pressing protectively against the curve of her belly. Every shadow stretched too long. Every creak felt too loud. Her pulse spiked with every shift of the silence. Malik had been gone too long. Then, a noise. Ava's breath hitched. Footsteps, right outside the door. She felt it before she heard it. The faintest press against the handle. Testing. Checking. Searching. Ava's fingers dug into the couch, her knuckles white, the whisper of movement. A pause. A hesitation. The slightest creak of the porch step. Then, a low curse. Sharp. Frustrated. The footsteps retreated. Ava didn't breathe. Didn't move. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her ears ringing with the silence left behind. Then, the back door swung open. Malik stepped inside, his eyes already scanning, his presence already steadying. She sagged in relief, her entire body untensing all at once. "Malik!" "They're close," he cut in, his voice tight, clipped, focused. Ava's stomach twisted, a cold knot forming deep inside her. She wanted to believe this would end soon, that Hale would come through, that they'd find a way out of this. But then she saw it, the look in Malik's eyes. Sharp, unforgiving, prepared. This wasn't ending. This was just beginning. The safe house felt smaller now, tighter, the walls pressing in, suffocating. Ava sat at the edge of the couch, knees drawn up, hands cradling her stomach. She wasn't shaking, not yet, but it was coming. Malik stood by the window, his body coiled, wound tight like a spring ready to snap, ready for war. His gun sat within reach, fingers grazing the edge of the table every few minutes, like he needed to remind himself it was there. His mind was somewhere else, planning, calculating. It had been hours since he'd taken out Trey's scout, since he'd come back into the house, his voice sharp with urgency, his movements clipped, efficient, since she'd realized, once and for all, that this wasn't going to end. Not until someone was dead. And Malik? He wasn't planning on waiting for that someone to be him. Ava took a breath, forcing her voice to steady, even as her hands curled into the fabric of her shirt. "We need to leave." Malik didn't turn, didn't flinch, didn't even acknowledge her at first. She swallowed, her throat tight. "Malik!" His voice came, quiet, controlled, too controlled. "I heard you." Ava clenched her fists. "Then answer me." Finally he turned. His jaw was set, his eyes hard. "We're not running." Ava exhaled sharply, a bitter laugh catching in her throat. Of course. Malik, the soldier. Malik, the protector. Malik, the man who didn't back down, even when he should. She stepped closer, her voice raw, trembling, but firm. "Malik, listen to me. I don't care about pride. I don't care about proving a point. I care about our family. I care about this." She gestured toward her belly, her fingers shaking, her breath hitching. "And I care about you." His expression softened. Barely. "Ava, no." She pushed up from the couch, her movements sharp, urgent, desperate, stepping closer, closing the space between them. "You're not a soldier anymore. This isn't a battlefield." Malik's gaze darkened, his posture shifting just slightly. "That's exactly what this is." Ava flinched. Not because she disagreed, but because the worst part, he was right. She hated it. Hated that this felt like war. Hated that her home, her safety, their future had turned into a battlefield Malik refused to leave. But that didn't mean she had to accept it. "You don't get it," she whispered, her voice raw, straining under the weight of her fear. "You're not the only one in danger, Malik." Her fingers dug into her sides, her chest tightening. "Every time you step out that door, every time you disappear into the night, I don't know if you're coming back." Malik's face didn't change, didn't break, didn't soften, but his fists clenched. Ava shook her head, her throat burning, the ache in her chest growing sharper. "I can't do this anymore." The words hit the air like a gunshot. Malik inhaled, slow and deep, his chest rising, his jaw tight. "Then what?" His voice was low, even, but not calm. "You want to keep running? Hide forever? You think Trey's just gonna stop?" Ava's breath shook, her vision blurred. "I don't know." Her voice cracked, but she pushed forward. "But I know we can't fight them alone." Silence stretched, thick, suffocating. Then, a knock. Ava flinched, Malik moved before she could react. Gun already in hand, shoulders stiff. Ready. Another knock. Lighter, familiar. "Relax," came a voice through the door. "It's me," Ava exhaled. Relief, but not enough. Malik didn't lower his gun, didn't trust it. He checked the peephole, waited, processed. Then, finally, he unbolted the door. Jasmine. She barely made it 2 steps before she pulled Ava into a tight hug. "Girl, I've been losing my damn mind." Ava sagged into her, her throat closing, her eyes burning. "Me too." Jasmine pulled back, taking her in. "You look like hell." Ava let out a short, humorless laugh. "Thanks." Jasmine turned to Malik, arms crossing. "And you. You really thought you could just disappear and not have me show up?" Malik didn't blink. "It was safer." Jasmine scoffed. "Yeah? How's that working out?" Ava sighed. "Jasmine. No, for real." Jasmine cut in, turning back to her. "You can't keep doing this. Trey's people? They're all over. They're hitting up everybody, asking about y'all. About Malik." Ava's stomach turned. "What did you tell them?" Jasmine's face hardened. "What the hell you think I told them?" Malik watched her closely. "You seen Trey?" Jasmine hesitated. "No, but I've seen Reese. And trust me, if he's out, Trey ain't far." Ava pressed a hand to her forehead. "Jazz, please, tell me you have something. Anything." Jasmine exhaled. "I got a friend. Knows a guy who can get you 2 out of the city." Quietly. Malik's jaw locked. "No," he said. Ava snapped. "Malik, for the love of God, running doesn't fix this." He cut in, voice hard. Jasmine's face darkened. "Neither does dying." Silence. Ava swallowed. "Just think about it." Malik said nothing. Then, another knock. Ava's body went ice cold. But Malik knew this knock. His gun was still in his grip, but this time, he didn't raise it. He opened the door. Detective Hale stepped inside, face grim. "We got a problem." Hale wasted no time. "We picked up a couple of Trey's boys last night. Thought we could press them." Malik's gaze sharpened. "And?" Hale sighed. "They ain't talking." Ava's nails dug into her palms. "Then what are we supposed to do?" Hale looked at Malik. "We make a move before they do." Malik tilted his head. "You got something in mind?" Hale hesitated. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said. "But you're not gonna like it." Ava's head spun. She couldn't breathe. Hale and Malik were already talking. Strategy, tactics, countermeasures. Like this was a war. She pressed a hand to her stomach, swallowing the nausea building in her throat. Then she turned and walked out. Malik blinked. Ava? She didn't stop, didn't turn. Not until she was outside, hands braced against the cool metal railing, sucking in gulps of air. It was too much. She felt him before she heard him. Malik's voice, low. "Talk to me." Ava squeezed her eyes shut. I don't know how much more I can take." Malik's hand brushed her shoulder. "I know." She let out a shaky breath. "Then end it, Malik. Find a way, because I can't live like this." Malik stilled. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. And Ava knew. This was going to end, one way or another. Malik sat at the small dining table, gun disassembled in front of him. His hands moved with calm precision. Checking, cleaning, reassembling. He wasn't rushing. There was no hesitation. Across the room, Ava sat curled up in the armchair, watching him in silence. She had said what she needed to say. Find a way to end it. And Malik had understood. Now he was getting ready to do exactly that. The war was coming, and he wasn't planning on losing. The first thing he did was inventory. His Glock was good, clean, loaded, but one gun wouldn't be enough. Hale had confiscated his military weapons years ago, telling him that life was over. Malik had agreed at the time. But now he needed every edge he could get. He slipped on his jacket and stood. "I'll be back." Ava's head snapped up. "Where are you going?" "Getting what I need," she exhaled. "Malik." He crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling in front of her. "I promised I'd keep you safe. Let me do that." She searched his face. "You're really going to do this, aren't you?" He didn't blink. "Yes." Ava swallowed hard, then nodded. "Then come back to me." He squeezed her hand once, always. Then he was gone. Malik's first stop was an old connection. He parked in front of a run-down auto shop, the neon open sign flickering weakly. The city had changed, but some things stayed the same. Inside, The scent of oil and metal filled the air. Behind the counter, a stocky man in his 50s looked up from a ledger. Leon Parker. The man's gaze flicked to Malik's face, then to his bruised knuckles. He sighed. I was wondering when you'd come knocking. Malik leaned against the counter. Need something from the back. Leon exhaled through his nose, tossing his pen aside. Figured. He glanced toward the garage door. You bringing heat my way? Malik shook his head. It won't come back to you. Leon studied him for a long moment. Then, with a grunt, he reached under the counter and pressed a button. A hidden door near the back clicked open. Don't make me regret this, Carter. Malik didn't answer. He just walked inside. Leon's back room wasn't for car parts. It was a vault. Shelves lined with metal cases. A small armory, hidden in plain sight. Malik moved with muscle memory, grabbing only what he needed. A second Glock, holster ready, extra magazines, a combat knife, his preferred close-quarter weapon, a shotgun, not subtle but effective. He slung the bag over his shoulder and walked back into the shop. Leon raised a brow. Guessing this ain't just protection. Malik zipped the bag shut. Didn't confirm or deny. Leon sighed. Then do me a favor. Don't get killed. Malik paused. Not in the plan. Then he walked out. Malik didn't drive back to the safe house. Not yet. Instead, he parked a few blocks from Trey's territory. It was time to pick the battlefield. Malik didn't want a war zone. That would put Ava at risk. He needed a controlled environment. Somewhere isolated. Limited escape routes. Somewhere Trey would follow. He knew just the place. An abandoned warehouse on the west side of the city. Malik had fought in tighter spots overseas. He could use the angles, the blind spots, make their numbers useless. But first, he had to lure Trey in. And that would require bait. Back at the safe house, Malik pulled out his phone. Ava sat up when he walked in. What did you do? He didn't answer. Instead, he scrolled through his contacts and pulled up a number he hadn't used in years. He hit call. The line rang once, twice. Then, a voice. Thought you was hiding, Carter. Malik smirked. If I wanted to hide, you'd never find me. Reese chuckled darkly. So what's this? You finally ready to face the music? Malik leaned against the table, voice cool, calculated. I'm giving Trey one shot. Me and him. No crew, just us. Reese hummed. And why would he agree to that? Because if he doesn't, I start hunting first. Silence. Then a slow laugh. You got a death wish, huh? Malik's smirk faded. Tell Trey where to meet me. He's got one chance to finish this. One. Reese exhaled. You really think you're walking out of this? Malik glanced at Ava. Then, back to the phone. Yes. He hung up. Ava's face was pale. Malik. What did you just do? He met her gaze. I just ended this. Malik set his guns on the table, checking each magazine, each safety. He felt Ava's presence before she spoke. You're really going, aren't you? He turned to her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. She was terrified. Malik stepped closer, cupping her face. This ends now. Her breath hitched. And if it doesn't? Malik didn't blink, didn't hesitate. Then I don't come back. Ava sucked in a sharp breath, eyes shining. Then, finally, she nodded. Because she knew this was it. No more running. No more waiting. Tomorrow, it would all be over. One way or another. The warehouse was silent except for the faint creak of the wind through broken windows. Malik moved through the space with deliberate care, his boots crunching softly against the dirt-streaked floor. This was the place. It was vast, but not too open, filled with rusted machinery and stacks of old shipping crates, shadows curled in every corner, providing enough cover for what he needed. He scanned the room again, his tactical mind breaking the space into zones, kill zones, blind spots, escape routes. This was where it would end, his battleground. Malik spent hours preparing. The shotgun was tucked behind a stack of crates in the far corner, aimed toward the largest entry point. A backup weapon. One of the Glock pistols was loaded and ready on his hip, the other stashed under a piece of sheet metal near the catwalk, just in case. The knife? That stayed with him. Close quarters were inevitable. He adjusted a pulley system above one of the doorways, tying a length of rope to the beam. A trap. Malik wasn't just preparing to fight. He was preparing to win. By the time the sun set, the warehouse had become a battlefield, one that only he understood. Malik's truck sat parked a block away from the warehouse, partially hidden behind a rusted chain-link fence. He had made sure it was visible enough to be found, to be followed. Reese's number was already blocked after their last conversation. Malik didn't need confirmation. Trey would come. He always would. And when he did, Malik would be ready. Back at the safe house, Ava was silent. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded over her belly, her thoughts racing. Malik hadn't given her the details. Not all of them. But she didn't need them to understand what was about to happen. He had kissed her goodbye before he left, his hand lingering on her cheek. "I'll see you soon," he had said. And she had nodded. But now, in the quiet, with only the hum of the heater for company, her resolve cracked. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Jasmine. Ava hesitated, then picked it up. "Jasmine," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I think Malik's going to do something. Something he might not come back from." Jasmine's voice was sharp. "Where is he?" Ava swallowed hard. "I don't know. He wouldn't tell me." Jasmine exhaled loudly. "Ava, listen to me. You need to trust him." "I do," Ava said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I'm so scared." Jasmine softened. "He's not just doing this for him, you know. He's doing this for you, for the baby. He's not gonna let them win." Ava nodded, even though Jasmine couldn't see her. Because deep down, she knew Jasmine was right. Trey leaned against the hood of the SUV, flicking ash from his cigarette onto the pavement. He stared at the warehouse in the distance, his expression unreadable. "This the spot?" Reese asked, stepping up beside him. Trey nodded slowly, his gaze narrowing. "Yeah, this is him." Reese glanced at the building, then back at Trey. "You really think he's dumb enough to fight us on his own?" Trey smirked. "Dumb? Nah." He took another drag of his cigarette. "But desperate?" "Yeah." Behind them, 2 more SUVs idled, engines humming. 9 men total. Trey wasn't taking chances this time. Reese frowned. "You think it's a trap?" Trey let the cigarette drop, crushing it under his boot. "Don't care if it is." He turned, gesturing to his men. "Either way, he's dead by the end of the night." Reese nodded, a smirk tugging at his lips. "About time." Trey looked back at the warehouse, his grin widening. "Let's go say hi." Malik crouched in the shadows of the warehouse, his breathing slow and measured. He could hear them now, the low rumble of engines, the scrape of tires against pavement. They were here. The SUVs came to a stop outside the building, headlights cutting through the dark. Malik stayed perfectly still as car doors opened and boots hit the ground. He counted 9 sets of footsteps. Trey's voice carried through the night. "Carter!" The sound echoed through the warehouse, bouncing off the walls. Malik didn't move. "Come on out, big man," Trey called again, his tone mocking. "You wanted a face-to-face, didn't you?" Malik's grip on the Glock tightened. He didn't answer. Not yet. The sound of footsteps grew louder as Trey's crew moved toward the entrance. Malik shifted slightly, positioning himself behind a stack of crates. He had already memorized their path. They'd funnel in, overconfident, underestimating him again, and when they did, he'd be waiting. Trey stepped into the warehouse first, his boots crunching against the dirt floor. He scanned the space, his smirk unwavering. "Where you at, Carter?" he called, his voice echoing. "Hiding already." Reese and the others fanned out behind him, weapons drawn. They moved with confidence, their numbers giving them a sense of control. But Trey was savoring this. Because to him, this wasn't a fight. This was the end. "The trap is ready." Malik exhaled slowly, his finger brushing the trigger. This was it. The calm before the storm. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what was about to happen. And as Trey and his crew moved deeper into the warehouse, Malik's lips curved into a faint, cold smile. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The warehouse swallowed Trey and his crew whole. Malik crouched in the shadows of the upper catwalk, motionless, watching as Trey's men moved below him. They spread out, their movements confident, cocky even, like they were here for a routine execution. Amateurs. The dim light of their flashlights flickered across crates and rusted machinery, but they weren't looking with the sharpness of trained hunters. They thought Malik was cornered, and that would be their downfall. Trey's voice rang out, echoing against the steel walls. "Carter!" Malik didn't move. "You really think hiding's gonna save you?" Trey taunted. "Man, I gave you an out. Could have been quick." He chuckled, his tone almost casual. "But no, you wanted to make this hard." Malik's grip on his Glock tightened, but he stayed silent, waiting. The first of Trey's men stepped into the kill zone, a stack of crates Malik had rigged with a pulley system. The second he saw the man step into position, Malik pulled the rope from the shadows above. The crates came crashing down with a thunderous roar, hitting the man dead on. He didn't even have time to scream before the impact knocked him unconscious. Chaos erupted. "Yo, what the hell?" Reese shouted, spinning around, gun raised. Trey's grin faltered, but only slightly. "Relax," he barked. "It's just him. He's trying to scare us." Another voice called out, panicked. "Dante's down!" Trey's jaw tightened. "Spread out. Find him." Mistake number 2. Malik shifted silently, moving along the catwalk toward the second trap. Divide and conquer. That was the goal. Malik's next target was 2 men moving together, trying to clear one of the corners of the warehouse. They whispered to each other, their nerves palpable. As they passed under a loose beam, Malik pulled another rope. The beam swung down, slamming into the first man and sending him flying. The second man turned, startled, but before he could react, Malik dropped silently behind him. The Glock's barrel pressed into the back of his head. "Drop it," Malik growled. The man froze, his weapon clattering to the floor. Malik didn't hesitate. He struck the man in the temple with the butt of his pistol, sending him crumpling to the ground. 2 more down. Trey stood in the middle of the warehouse, his smirk finally cracking as the sounds of his men being taken out one by one echoed through the space. "This ain't funny anymore, Carter!" he shouted, his voice edged with anger. No response. He turned to Reese, his last remaining lieutenant. "You see him?" Reese shook his head, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Nah, man. He's like a ghost in here." Trey clenched his jaw, scanning the shadows. "He's just one guy," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "He can't take all of us." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Reese was the next to fall. He didn't even see it coming. One moment he was backing up, trying to keep Trey covered. The next, Malik appeared out of the shadows, slamming into him with raw force. The 2 men grappled, Reese throwing wild punches. But Malik's movements were sharper, more controlled. He ducked, countered, and finally drove his knee into Reese's ribs, sending him sprawling. Before Reese could get back up, Malik struck him in the side of the head, rendering him unconscious. Trey watched it all happen, his jaw tightening further. And then it was just the 2 of them. Malik stood over Reese's limp body, his chest rising and falling steadily. His Glock was still in his hand, but he didn't raise it. Trey tilted his head, a slow, dangerous grin spreading across his face. "So," he said, his voice low, "this is what you wanted, huh? Just me and you?" Malik didn't answer. Trey chuckled, tossing his weapon aside. "All right, Carter. Let's see what you got." Trey moved first, lunging at Malik with surprising speed. Malik dodged, sidestepping the blow and countering with a sharp jab to Trey's ribs. Trey grunted, but didn't back down. He swung again, this time connecting with Malik's jaw. Malik stumbled slightly, but his footing held. He retaliated with a vicious elbow strike, catching Trey in the side of the head. The fight was brutal, each man landing heavy, punishing blows. Malik's training gave him the edge, but Trey fought dirty, grabbing, gouging, aiming for weak points. At one point, Trey grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground, swinging it toward Malik's head. Malik ducked just in time, the pipe whistling past his ear. He surged forward, tackling Trey to the ground. The 2 men grappled, fists flying, the impact of each strike echoing through the warehouse. Trey managed to throw Malik off, rolling to his feet. His grin was gone now, replaced with something darker. "You're good," Trey panted. "I'll give you that. But you're bleeding. You're tired. And me?" He spread his arms. "I'm just getting started." Malik wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, his expression cold. "We'll see." The two men circled each other, the fight far from over. The warehouse was silent except for their breathing. Malik wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his muscles aching, his ribs burning. Trey was still grinning, but it wasn't cocky anymore. It was wild, unhinged. "You're slowing down, Carter," Trey taunted, rolling his shoulders. "That military training ain't helping you now, is it?" Malik didn't respond. He was assessing. His body hurt. Bad. His left side was stiff, every breath sharp. Trey had landed some solid hits, but Malik had been hurt before. He had survived worse. Trey lunged first. Malik dodged barely, but the movement sent a flare of pain through his ribs. Trey noticed. And then Malik made his first mistake. He stepped wrong, just slightly, but enough. Trey saw the opening and capitalized. A brutal kick to the ribs. Malik stumbled, and then Trey tackled him. Malik hit the ground hard, his back slamming into the cold concrete. Trey landed on top of him, raining down punches, heavy, bone-shaking. The impact jarred Malik's vision, but he forced himself to focus. 1, 2, 3 hits, each one harder than the last. Trey was laughing now, a low, dark chuckle. "What's wrong, tough guy? Thought you were gonna finish me?" Malik's arms felt heavy. His movements were slowing. Trey grabbed him by the collar and yanked him up, delivering a savage knee to his gut. Pain exploded through Malik's body. Trey let him drop, stepping back, breathing hard but victorious. "That all you got?" Trey sneered. "After all that talk?" Malik's hand clenched into a fist against the floor. His vision blurred. His ribs screamed. His muscles were weak. Trey turned away. Just slightly. Just for a second. And that was his mistake. Malik moved. Fast. Faster than his body should have allowed. He grabbed the rusted pipe Trey had dropped earlier. Trey barely had time to register the movement before Malik swung. The pipe cracked against Trey's knee. Trey shouted in pain, stumbling back. His balance faltered. Not much, but enough. Malik pushed through the pain. He surged forward, driving his shoulder into Trey's chest, slamming him against the metal railing of the catwalk. The impact rattled through them both. Trey's hands scrambled for a grip, but Malik didn't let up. He hit him again. This time, Trey's body lurched backward. His back slammed against the railing, his legs barely holding. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. Malik stood over him, breath ragged. His face was unreadable. Trey let out a shaky laugh, still trying to act unbothered. "You," he coughed, spitting blood onto the concrete. "You think you're any different from me?" Malik stared down at him, expression cold, unforgiving. Then, finally, he spoke. "The difference is," Malik tightened his grip on the pipe, "I'm walking out of here." And then he swung one last time. The pipe crashed into the side of Trey's skull. Trey collapsed. His body hit the floor with a sickening thud, completely still. It was over. Malik stood there for a long moment, the pipe slipping from his fingers, clattering onto the floor. His breath was heavy, unsteady. His hands were shaking. His side was screaming, his ribs a fiery mess. But he was still standing. He turned, scanning the warehouse. The bodies of Trey's crew were sprawled across the floor. Some unconscious, some groaning. He had done it, but he felt no victory. No relief, just exhaustion. He staggered toward the exit, gripping his ribs. Every step felt heavier. Then, the sound of distant sirens. His head lifted. Hail. The cops were coming. Malik exhaled slowly. Good. It was finally over. Instead of leaving, Malik stepped back into the shadows near the warehouse's entrance. He wasn't going to run. Not this time. His body ached, his pulse still hammering, but he stayed alert, gun still in his grip. Just in case. The first squad car pulled up outside, followed by 2 more. Their flashing lights washed the warehouse in red and blue. Malik watched as Hale stepped out, his expression unreadable. Officers poured in, weapons raised, barking orders at the downed gang members. Malik lowered his own gun and raised his hands just slightly, signaling he wasn't a threat. Hale's eyes landed on him, his gaze flicking from Malik's battered form to Trey's motionless body. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Hale sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. Jesus Christ, Carter. Malik swallowed, his throat dry. Told you I'd handle it? Hale shook his head, muttering something under his breath before nodding toward the nearest officer. Cuff the ones still breathing. Call an ambulance for the ones who need it. A cop approached Malik warily. You armed? Malik nodded, slowly pulling his Glock from his waistband and handing it over. Grip first. Not anymore. Hale narrowed his eyes. You know I should take you in, right? Malik gave a tired smirk. You won't. Hale let out a long sigh. Damn right I won't. He turned, barking orders to his team, as Malik finally let himself breathe. It was done. For the first time in days, Malik felt the weight lift, just a little. And soon, he was going home, 3 months later. The hospital room was quiet, except for the rhythmic beep of the monitors and the occasional rustle of blankets. Malik sat in the chair beside the bed, completely still. His fingers rested gently on the tiny bundle in his arms. She was so small. Delicate fingers, soft skin, her tiny chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. His daughter. His. Ava stirred beside him, her voice groggy. You're staring at her again. Malik didn't look up. He couldn't. He was too afraid that if he blinked, this moment would disappear. Ava smiled, exhausted but radiant. She's not going anywhere, you know. Malik exhaled shakily. I know. But that wasn't what scared him. What scared him was how close he had come to losing this. His grip tightened slightly around the baby's blanket. Violence had followed him home. He had spent years trying to leave that life behind, trying to give Ava something normal, something safe. And yet, in the end, it had found them anyway. It had forced his hand. For a long time, he had wondered if he had done the right thing. If meeting Trey on his terms had made him any different from the men he swore he wasn't like. But then, he looked down at his daughter's sleeping face. She was here, alive, safe, and Ava was here, beside him. And suddenly, it didn't matter anymore, because when it had come down to it, he had protected them. No regrets, no doubts. Just this, his family, whole. Ava reached out, brushing her fingers against his. She looks just like you. Malik finally looked up, meeting her tired gaze. I was hoping she'd look like you. Ava chuckled softly. Give it time. Malik smirked, but it faded quickly as his eyes drifted back to the baby. She's perfect. Ava's smile softened. Yeah, she is. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy. For once, it was peaceful. Malik ran a finger along his daughter's tiny fist, watching as she instinctively curled her fingers around him. Ava watched him carefully. You okay? Malik exhaled. Yeah. For the first time in a long time, he meant it. Ava shifted in the bed, adjusting the pillows. We still need a name. Malik smirked. I thought we agreed on something. Ava raised an eyebrow. You mean when you tried to name her after a weapon? Malik chuckled. Serafina is a strong name. Ava rolled her eyes. She's not a battle axe, Malik. Malik shook his head, his smile lingering. All right, fine. What do you want to name her? Ava hesitated. Then, softly, Naomi. Malik blinked. The name settled into his chest, like it belonged there. He looked down at his daughter again. Naomi Carter. Yeah, that was right. Malik leaned down, pressing a kiss to her tiny forehead. Naomi it is. Outside, the city moved on. Sirens still wailed in the distance. People still walked streets that weren't safe. But here, in this room, Malik didn't think about any of that. Here, in this room, the war was over, and all that mattered was the life ahead. For Ava, for Naomi, for him, for the family he had fought for and won. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.